Hello, everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of our great conversation with Jessica. Thank you for joining us again, and stay tuned as last week's conversation deepens.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Check Writers Room. 3 GPs, 3 angles, 1 hot take.
I'm Yasmin Cruz-Farine.
I'm Shalonda Armstrong.
My name is Sydney Thomas. Let's get into it.
So, no, Jessica, you hit on a really good point that I want to double click on a little bit. And that is, you said, if you're not building a feature, right? If you're doing a platform, and we have a lot of conversations around, are you building a standalone product, or will it become a feature? And I think that a lot of founders aren't ready for that honest conversation on what are they actually building and how will it sit in the enterprise. So I would love to talk about when you're seeing a company that is doing well in revenue, but you know that the moment they get acquired, it's no longer a standalone product and it becomes a feature of the larger conglomerate. I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point, because when you're getting started, you're not coming out here saying I'm going to build the next CRM. I mean, like, a lot of them are like the next CRM, the next EHR. Well, you can't just go out and like
You're not beating Epic. You're not beating
Epic.
We're not replacing Epic. Like, can we just say that out loud? We're not replacing Epic. I understand everyone doesn't like Epic, but you're not replacing it.
Or pick a customer in the space that is not using Epic. Just stay away from where Epic is already in place.
Yes, or if you're in the B2B space, you're not replacing Oracle, you're not replacing Salesforce. Those are database plays. So you just have to know your territory. Sorry, Jessica. I just think founders need to realize.
100%. To me, it's like would I go out and try to beat HubSpot at their own game? No, unless I can get them to keep trying to take everyone's data, right? Like they're too big. They're too big. But when you're building, you have to start small. You've got to be like, I want you to be so good at 1 to 2 different things, right? And go deep and be really, really, really great at that. In healthcare technology, you cannot do it all. You cannot do clinical trials really well. You cannot do voice AI plus RCM really well. You can't go down the credentialing route and also do a PDM, right? And do all of those really, really well. That's stupid, right? And you look at Epic. Epic is able to go and build out a new platform and, release a new feature coming in 18 months, whatever, right? Because they have an infrastructure that the health systems are just not going to rip out. They've spent millions and millions of dollars. So if they're kind of crap at this feature, the health system is still often going to choose that over something new that's really, really good at it, right? Really, really good at their space. Now, but when companies get started, you have to build a feature. But what they don't do quickly enough is expand from that feature, go deeper with their customers. When you have a feature and you have something that these customers absolutely love, it's actually something that YC says, right? Like, okay, before you start thinking about growth, think about depth, right? If you get sticky enough, you start to understand, oh, there's this problem. You've been solving it this way. What if we solved it this way for you? And add on quickly. And that's how you become a true platform that is so sticky and you're spreading through word of mouth, all right? And then when it comes to clinics and these PE backers, it spreads through word of mouth. Maybe health systems, they don't talk to each other so much as often. They kind of are not fans of each other. I'm not really quite sure why. But that's how you kind of go from a feature to a platform. Now, unfortunately, what happens is, and I'm not sure why this is the case, and I think it might be incentive alignment, I think it might be the capital, right? They're thinking about raising the next round versus how to get as many customers and build out that platform as quickly as possible, but they kind of stall out. They build a feature and they try to go get as many customers on that feature as possible, and they start forgetting how to go deeper. Because they're like, hey, we can only have 2 employees. We have an eng team right now. That eng team is off running and they're building AI for AI, like tech for tech's sake, right? And you're just like, you're so in the weeds on this feature and how to make it cooler and cooler and cooler. What about everything else you need to build a platform? And then you've run out of money. And you don't have the time to go build out the other features to start making yourself a true platform, an actual product here. And then you have to figure out how to get acquired. Because a VC, you're not going to want to invest in a feature. Well, you have that feature. Well, why can't this company just go build it? What's stopping Epic from running over you, right? And that question, founders are like, oh, but, we can do this and this. And sorry, no, right? Healthcare is a trust game. There's too much noise. These health system executives are literally telling me they're going to conferences underneath a fake name. They're just so tired of being bombarded. They see AI everywhere. They don't even know how to implement that inside their own company. They're getting told that they need to change all of these things. They're not being heard, right, in terms of what their goals are, what they're actually trying to achieve. And so they're only going to go with the ones that they trust the most, the people that they already have relationships with.
Right.
And
just really quick
yeah,
to that point, did you guys see that OpenAI changed its settings so that now the data that you share with it is more readily available than I think if it was following HIPAA, if OpenAI was following HIPAA, it would be, which I think also points to some of these, like the trust point. I think that was such an astute point, Jessica, is like, especially in healthcare, when you're dealing with people's lives, like this actually is very important. Your AI bot that says it might move the needle for somebody's ability to get access to a incredibly important, cure or procedure, that is actually impacting a life. And so I'm actually very happy that the health systems are a little bit more, concerned and thoughtful in some of this, diligence of these companies, because their job is incredibly important and difficult. And they do have to live by this, the Socrates law of do no harm that tech founders don't always abide by, frankly.
But I don't know, Sydney. I think that's where the misalignment incentives conversation in this particular sector really kind of comes into play. Because what you're saying, I hear, Sydney, is giving a lot of credit to the actual buyer. But I love a CFO, but hospital system CFO, sometimes they're losing money in many cases in some of these settings, right? And so, you're talking about, make sure it's connected to the patient outcome. When I hear a lot of the buyers saying like, well, how does this provide more revenue? How do we create more volume? Which
how will you make more money?
How will you make is not what you're talking about, Sydney, is not the same answer when the CFO is making the buying decision around connecting to the outcome. So I think kind of tying it all together is, to your point, there's a fine line about feature and too many point solutions in this space. And do these point solutions add up to a patient outcome, right? And then you have the whole bureaucracy that comes into play. Like they don't make tech decisions quickly or even in concert. I mean, they can barely understand like medical interactions, let alone tech interactions, right? So I would love to see over time, kind of like Jessica, this point about like enter into the tech stack as a deep feature, but then make sure that like it's not like so noisy across the tech stack.
Well, once you get in, right, if you can figure out, so Zanina, to give you credit, right, there are different committees inside of health systems. Well, no, 100%. Like there are different committees inside of health systems and different buyers. And unfortunately, when you're selling into health systems, you're selling B2B, clinics are much easier, PE groups, they're just people, right? Health systems, you might think you have one decision maker, but that decision maker now starts to look at so many different committees along the path. If a health system has a committee, we can go down a whole track on how to sell into a health system. But the clinical committee cares about outcomes. They care about output. They care about speed. They care about how it's going to make them do their job better. Now the clinical committee brings in, says, I'm going to work with this group. And then they go to the data team, the security team, the CFO, because more than likely they had a budget. Oh, it goes, a few $1,000s over budget. Oh, now the CFO is involved, and the CFO says, well, these are our 3 focuses. We're trying to get from 0.5% margin to 1% in the next 18 months, right? This is not going to help us. These are the things that we said are most important. So no, is this going to make me money? Is this going to help me move this forward? So sorry. Go find something that's already integrated. Epic? Oh, Epic's rolling that out in 16 months? Right. Sounds great. Oh, it's going to take us another 6 months to actually integrate that after it comes out, and it's probably still going to be crap. Sorry. It's still, that's where you're going to be pushed towards. And so, there are coming back to this feature side, if you can build a feature that people love, that you can get into a health system, that you can get into a clinic, you can get into a PE-backed group, any of this, do it really, really well, and then expand as quickly as possible. Because now you have one massive customer, and maybe you should have a little customer concentration, so go get 4 or 5 of them where you're doing this really well, but expand. That's what's going to make you sticky. Now you have the relationships, right? Now start owning that data, right? Start making yourself so valuable that your technology is interesting, but really it's the distribution and the data piece that you have that makes you an attractive acquisition. And then you're not even talking about that. Now you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to go grow, and I need this feature. I don't have the time to do it. I'm going to go take on some venture debt and then go acquire a company. And I'm going to grow through acquisition. Now you become a platform. Now you become a $1 billion business you're going to have a $1 billion valuation. You're going to get picked up by one of the other massive groups. And that's how you get to that $2.6 billion median valuation, right? That exit.
I think that so many founders underestimate the sales component to healthcare, because it's not even just selling into the health system. Once you're in the health system, oftentimes the doctors need to know you exist so that they can be an advocate for you to the patient. The doctor may know you exist and still doesn't want to be an advocate to the patient. And so there's so many layers of this that does require a serious infrastructure build, which is like team infrastructure, which is, I think, why also some of these outcomes around exits and selling into Optum actually is the best strategy for some of these companies, because they just will never have the ground game sales force that Optum has. I'm also saying it's not impossible, but I just think that it's something that folks can underestimate and not realize how many months and capital, months in additional time to significant revenue that will take you after you've gotten the health systems contract signed. You thought you did the hard thing already, and it's just whoops, there's another piece to this.
I would also say, whether it's healthcare or other sectors, this is what remains true. How deep are you integrated in the workflow, and do you have proprietary data? If you're solving those 2 areas, then you can build and grow into a $1 billion valuation, become a decacorn. There's something really sticky about your business. But if you only have one or the other or none, it's going to be very hard. You have to be integrated in the workflow, and you have to hold on to some level of proprietary data where it's so sticky that they can't rip you out. If you make the switching costs so low, then any industry is going to go and try out new tools. That's how some of these giants became the giants. And I don't know why founders want to shy away from some of that at times, but it's still true today. It's not going to go away. Do you have proprietary data, and are you deeply ingrained in the workflow?
Yeah. Jessica, zooming out, because you see a lot of the data, there's also for these kind of exit partners sweet spots. Because a lot of founders, dream big. But if you get to a certain point, you're not in the price point for me to even buy you. So can you talk about some of the data so that when founders reach certain metrics, that they know that's actually a time where I'm actually palatable?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it depends. This is where we talk about building for the acquisition in mind. You have to know your value add to the industry. You have to understand if you are building something where the technology is so differentiated and you know that these 3-4 acquirers are interested in acquiring you because, hey, here's their mandates. Here's what they're looking at over the next few years. Get to know the corp dev teams, right? Get to know some of these groups. Get to know that, hey, I want to get acquired by this corporation, this company, but they do what we call a rent to own model. Right? They will only acquire once they have rented you out and you've proven your value. So you've got to build those partnerships up front, right? And then know at what point, like what else are they acquiring? How much are they acquiring for, right? And if your valuation is beyond that, like it's more than likely that you're not going to be an interesting company for them, because these companies, they might be doing 150, $500 million in revenue, right? They can only afford so much, right? Many of them aren't going to go out and just go raise around just to acquire you. Shouldn't they just try to? It depends on what's really important for those groups. So, if you're becoming a platform and you're looking at a 4 to 6x multiple, right, on forward rev, don't raise more than what that valuation is going to be. Right? Think about.
That's a great rule. We founders, write that down.
Say that again. That was the key for this one.
Yeah, right. So if you're a platform, if you're building a platform, you're going to get acquired for 4 to 6x forward revenue multiples. Don't raise beyond that valuation, right? Like, make it a win for you, make it a win for your investors. Go build that out and then go around and do it again. If you're building a feature, expect a 3x multiple forward rev multiple, right? That's the highest that you're going to get. And then honestly, most of you are going to get acqui-hired. And that's just the truth of it, right? And so know who you are, know what you're building, know what your differentiator is, what people are going to acquire you for, right? Like, you look at Summer Health. Summer Health just got bought by Doctronic. What was really interesting for that group was the data, the own data. Now imagine if they had focus on that piece and went from 100,000 conversations to 1 million conversations that somebody was trying to acquire. Well, now you become highly valuable, and that conversation that you're having when you're going to go get acquired, you've got multiple parties at the table. And you've been thinking about this ahead of time, so you're not focused on one person who's going to acquire you. You're focused on potentially 3. I say at a minimum, I got lucky, and one of my exits, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I brought 6 to the table. One of them tried to...
Can we talk about this, actually, because you are talking from real experience here. And so I just want to make sure that everybody who's listening gets that. It's like, you've done this. It's not that you just, came into this and thought you could help coach. You're coming from lived experience. And so I'd love to get your story a bit more, as much as you're willing to share, because it is, I think, really fascinating and, pretty awesome.
It's been a wild journey. It's really cool to say it now, because I'm like, oh, it made so much sense. Makes so much sense now. I had no idea what the heck I was doing along the way. I got my start in healthcare. My first job was at an OBGYN office back when they had paper that would tear out on the side, and I had to upload it into Epic. And Epic was cool and wild and weird back then, right? It was a very large multi-site OBGYN group, and that was my first job. I moved into SCADA Solutions, which is energy management, software, hardware. We grew through acquisition, and I got really lucky. I always waited till I made it. I'm the oldest of 7. I'm pretty intense. And I got this opportunity to go and help us grow by acquiring companies internationally. And so I got my first taste of M&A, right? Doing implementation, growing things, managing people, and I was honestly way too young and did the things I did back then, or I look at myself now, I'm like, wow, I'm an idiot. I can't believe they trusted me. I moved into early stage companies. My first early stage company I met on a plane, and I, again, was young and ballsy, and I was like, oh, you're growing beyond New York? I can help you do that. Absolutely. And we got acquired. And I was just hooked. I was like, obviously this is the early stage game, right? So, I went through a ton of failures. My first company that I built, my first technology company that I actually ended up building and taking to fruition, because I played around and played founder for quite a while. It got acquired, and it was in childcare. I had this opportunity to work with government agencies, roll out technology, what we call shared service alliances, all across the country. I found that they had a hole. They needed real-time supply and demand data. I went and built that product. Now, I would say when I got it acquired, again, because I had this niche, because I had these relationships, and I understood a space in the market that other people didn't understand. We basically built the Flatiron Health for childcare. I was able to bring 6 people to the table when I went to go get acquired, because we just couldn't raise. I'm like, to be honest, like we could raise, but the money that we needed to take wasn't going to be big enough and fast enough once people started realizing what we were doing, that there wasn't worth it. And honestly, I didn't want to stay in childcare the rest of my life. Like, it's just tough, right? It's a tough space. One of the people tried to steal all my clients. One of the acquirers. 2 of them were beautiful, huge potential acquisitions for us. And I didn't give myself enough time.
That's another lesson.
Another lesson. I thought I was so smart, right? I had 6 months of runway. I was crushing it. We had these government contracts that were coming in, right? Government doesn't pay up front. So there's going to take some time to get that revenue. And so there was a lot of promises. There was a lot of growth. There's still the idea that I was, trying to get people to buy something, and I was like, yeah, government contracts, I can turn them around real fast. And they're like, no, nobody can turn around government contracts. Like, is key man risk here. And I hadn't given myself enough time. These companies, one of them, which is going to IPO very soon, very annoying, one of them was already public, they needed 9 months at a minimum, and I didn't have that. And so
say that that's one of the things we talk about on this podcast, is like, when you have to disassociate way before, if you want to be able to sell to some of these bigger pocketed players, because they're not going to do it within 6 months. And once they know you're going to run out of money within 6 months, then they really don't want to do it. And then it's straight to acqui-hire, right? It's like
no leverage anymore. You've lost it.
You've lost your leverage. And then also, this is why I tell founders, if you are preparing for a sale, you need 9 at minimum, 9 months. You really need 12 to 14 months of runway for an acquisition. And that is because the negotiation time takes so long. But then after you sign, there's still a period of what we would call harmonization that needs to happen. And usually that's another 3 to 4 months. Right? So it takes a while. It's not just going to happen overnight.
The other thing that you also mentioned that takes time here is that sometimes, and I've seen this in our portfolio, you get the rent to buy version of it too, where you need like almost 5 months within this ecosystem as a partnership to see for their board if you actually move the metrics the way that you say you are. So if you do the rent to buy with one player, you need like 6 months to see if that partnership actually pans out. And you definitely can't run out of cash during that 6 months when you're dating multiple players.
And they have to be well implemented partnerships. A lot of these founders will say, I've got a partnership. I've got 5 of them. But how can you pick up the phone and call their partnerships person? Can you call their CEO? Do you have that good of a relationship? Is the win-win-win really that clear? No, most of the time it's not. You are not going to be acquired by that group. But it is a multi-year process often, right? Where these founders have met each other 6 years ago at a conference booth. They stayed in touch. And then when the acquisition comes around, they close in 3 months. Well, it's not a 3-month process. This has been a 6-year process, right? So, you have to give 100%. 9 months is minimum. 12 to 16 months is where we push people, because the process is grueling. It's going to take, with the bigger players, it's going to take 6 months. If it's going to be something worth it where you're going to walk away with life-changing money, it's going to take a minimum of 6 months of back and forth. You had to have so much leverage in order to be able to make it through that due diligence, continue to build your company, hopefully get an acquirer to cover your burn during that process, and God forbid nothing bad happens so you don't owe that money at the later time, right? You have to be a great negotiator. You have to give an acquisition your all. And you better come to the table with something worth it, right? Otherwise, it's a very intricate game here.
I often talk to very early stage founders. Are like, are they going to buy the team? Are they buying the tech? Are they buying the distribution? And really understanding your value proposition, because in the leverage, you have to understand what your value proposition is. If you don't know what it is for the buyer, then you're trying to prove yourself on too many fronts, and you don't have that.
You have to know what you're coming to the table with, but you also have to understand what they need, because that's part of the leverage, right? We say two things, right? You look at it from what are the facts and what do you have right now, and then what is the value that you're driving, because that's really what you want to negotiate on. You don't want to negotiate on EBITDA, right? Like, you want to negotiate on the fact that, like, hey, as a standalone business, I'm going to drive so much revenue to you, and I'm going to help this company in your portfolio or this vertical in your company expand significantly. So it's a cash cow, right? You have to understand both sides of that.
And then I would also add, while you're in the middle of the negotiation, you have to minimize your churn, right?
Yes.
You have to minimize the churn. You cannot lose key clients in the middle of the negotiation, because it changes everything as well. So again, founders, I really want you guys to understand there's so much nuance that goes into an acquisition, and it is not straightforward as everyone thinks. Similar to fundraising, right? There's no fun in fundraising. I don't think anyone's ever had fun doing it. And so there's so much that you really need to understand when you are at the table. And to Jessica's point, you have to learn quickly, or you will immediately be upside down in the negotiations.
Yeah.
The other part that I think is really important, I've seen this in my portfolio, is the first potential buyer that steps to you, you still have to create a process. Like, especially if you have a board, the board is going to want to see a process. And then some of your VCs are going to have very different exit incentives than you. And so you're going to have to get approval. And just don't get excited about the first person that kind of wants to buy you, because that's not a process. And I've seen that multiple times. Like, you've got to court. And you, Jessica, you did this really well in creating a real process.
We created a real process. The second time around, I will say we didn't need the process. We knew exactly what we were building for. But we created a process. Did I know what I was doing at the time? No. I really didn't. I was just like, I want more numbers. Like, this isn't enough, right? Like, I need to have more competition. But the other thing is that number that you get on the LOI is probably not going to be the number you end up at. And that's where, Shalana, what you're talking about, you have to keep your churn low. You have to keep growing. You need to, good Lord, please have all your docs cleaned up, ready to go, because they will continue to discount on risk. They'll continue to discount on every single flaw they find, right? Like, this is the relationship you're starting to build, and they get behind the scenes and they're like, oh man, your room is dirty, right? Like, this is not cute, right? You leave all your socks on the ground everywhere, right? Like, this is not fun. We're going to discount this, right? Also, being very aligned on terminology, because what you believe they mean versus what they mean can be very different. And if that's tied to your earnout, that can be a huge problem later down the road, right? So, but yeah, I think it's a process, and this is why you can't raise and consider an acquisition at the same exact time. This is why you can't start prepping your company to get ready 3 months beforehand. If you want something that's not an acqui-hire, you have to plan with the exit in mind. Starting Series A what I like to call like a growth round for many people, right? Like know what your valuation is, know what you're building towards, set the commercial strategy, and then you've got to find the funds that are aligned because I mean, I've seen many boards turn down life-changing money that would have been so great for that founder.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Right.
Because sometimes it's the VCs. Sometimes it's our fault. And I have seen this happen too. And it is so, so devastating to the founder, to the VCs who maybe are not on the board, but would also have loved that exit. I just think there's like this, exactly to your point, it's like the founder has to manage so many different relationships. The earlier you can start having these really open and honest conversations with everyone to get everyone on the same page, the better.
Yeah.
And not to mention the lawyers coming in. And when founders haven't been through this process, and I will say, like, something that I've learned in my career is, like, sometimes you get advice. And then in the instances where there's a banker, right? Like, the founder has to manage getting, oh, well, this is industry standard from the lawyer. Oh, well, the banker is saying this is the incentive of the banker. This is the incentive of the VC. There's a lot at play.
And then I also would say, given where we are in the market, the earnout period has shifted as well. And I don't think there's enough conversation around that. Earnouts used to be around 2 years. Now I'm seeing earnouts 3, 4, 5 years to earn that other half of that sale. So you also need to know, when do you actually get to step away? Because just because you sign the docs doesn't mean you actually get to go right off into the sunset.
100%.
All right. So transitioning to, we're going to do a little twist on would you write the check? All right. So I would love to ask you ladies, would you write the check based on the exit strategy of the founder? So you have a founder that comes to you, like Yasmin's point earlier, and has already outlined how they're seeing their potential exit. Given where we are in the market today, would you write the check?
To Jessica's earlier point, and also Yaz's earlier point, if you're a second-time founder, you know the drill. You're not coming in with these kind of like, what is that phrase, like bright-eyed, bushy tail, where you're just like, everything is awesome, anything is possible. Like, that could be true, but you're also grounded by the reality of like, what does great look like for me and for this company? And I really appreciate that level of clarity from founders, because I think that you can get pulled in just so many different directions. And I'm not going to invest in your company if you're saying my outcome is $5 million acquisition. That's not interesting to me. I still need to see a number that is high enough that is interesting to me. But if by just saying that you have a thesis around what an acquisition looks like, automatically like cuts you from our evaluation, no.
Yeah, I think all other things that we need to underwrite the deal being true, and the exit is is mapped out and it's a repeat founder, and I know they have the relationships to pull it off, then yes, I definitely am. But there's so many other factors that would also need to be aligned. And a fund returner math that the founder is presenting to me is great. And I'm not talking about a cursor outcome. Like, I think the point from Sydney's opening is like, most of us are not building our fund or firm around 3 potential companies. So, like, provided that the exit is still a fund returner, yes, I think it's really savvy.
So I'm going to give the VC answer. It depends.
You mean the consultant answer? Don't give us that baggage.
Everything.
And then the reason I say it depends is I need to understand, are you still going to run as fast as you can? because sometimes when you have that exit number in mind already, you start pacing because you already know where you want your exit ramp to be, and you may leave money on the table. So that's for me, I absolutely, to both you ladies' point, I want to see that you're thinking through it and you've thought deeply about it, but then also want to get a sense that you are also committed to running as fast as you can and gaining as much market share as possible before you do come to the table and start negotiating with that partner for that exit.
That's fair.
So now, ladies, we've come to the end of our discussion, and you know we always end with what is bringing you joy. So I'm actually going to start off with Jessica. What's bringing you joy right now?
Acrylic painting with a bottle of wine. Not even a glass, let's be real. Friday nights, my 13-year-old, he drinks the soda, right? But we get into acrylic painting at night. I'm too old to be going out with all of these kids these days. And I'll be home. I'll be home painting.
I love that. Yasmin.
Yeah, I was funny, Jessica. I was in a workout class and there were some hits from the time that I was in the clubs, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is reminding me that the last time I've been in a club was so long ago because like this is like 2010s music." I'm sure I've been in a club since then, but like since I was going regularly, I guess. What's bringing me joy? I would say we've had some birthday celebrations and just seeing, I think this is the first birthday my daughter turned 5 where she actually knew what was happening and was excited about it. And she put on like a weave ponytail because she was Rumi from K-pop Demon Hunters, and she was flipping it around, like living her best life. So it brought me a lot of joy, but then it also reminded me, why were I doing these parties before now? Like, she didn't even know what was happening. So that's the parenting insight and joy from this week.
Sydney, are you still loving the bees? What's bringing you joy?
Do love the bees, but also I am back to like Jessica and Yaz's point about the fact that we are getting old. I went to Ella May's concert last night in San Diego. She's the boot up. Like that was her hit in like 2018. And it reminded me, oh man, it was just a blast from the past. It was such a blast from the past concert. And it was really fun to just be out there and, um, you know, kind of reminding myself of that. Elise um, Welteroth, is that how you say her name? The Elaine, thank you. Elaine Welteroth is talking a lot about this on Instagram right now, where it's just like everyone wants to pretend it's 2016 again. And I was really feeling that vibe. I was just like, because what is 2018? It's basically 2016. And it felt so good to be back in that energy.
Was it middle parts or side parts? Like, what happened in 2016, just so I can know?
I don't know what it was about that year. I
Okay.
just graduated from business school and life was good. I don't know. It
Okay.
just like the sun was shining, really nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what was happening in 2016. I think it's just the nostalgia of looking back. Here's the thing. I think it's really hard for us to grapple with. We are more than halfway through the 2020s. Like, where did the decade go? Thanks to COVID. So that's just kind of where we are right now. What's bringing me joy? I have one, but I don't know if I want to share it with this episode or the next episode, depending on timing. Um, so when this episode airs, I will be on my way to Springfield, Massachusetts to see one of my good friends inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I am so excited. So shout out to Shamika Holsclaw. It's a long time coming. I'm so proud of you, friend. I know you have a voice note on my phone right now that I will get to. But that is what's bringing me joy right now, is just, I love celebrating my friends. It makes me really, bring me a lot of joy to just be there and celebrate my friends. So I love that. All right, ladies. Another great conversation. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll talk to you
Thank
ladies
you.
soon. All right. Talk to you ladies soon. Take care.
And that's the Check Writers Room. Special thanks to Natalia Skoko for editing. Subscribe to our newsletter and view show notes at checkwritersroom.com. Leave us a review wherever you are listening.